What is going on, folks? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the 2017 album by Stevie Stone. Basically, this project is called Level Up, and it came out in the late spring of 2017. So the thing about this particular album is Stevie Stone was still on Tech N9ne's Strange Music label around this time, and he was kind of starting. Stevie Stone was still on Tech N9ne's Strange Music label, but his big breakout album at the time was Malta Ben from 2015. I was kind of waiting for him to blow up further than that, but he kind of shifted back into underground territory with Level Up, and that was like I waited for the longest time for Wikipedia to finally make an article about Level Up, but they just never did. So I look at the concept. That was kind of one of the reasons why I didn't review this album back in like 2019 and 2020. This is one I've had on the back burner for a number of years. I wanted to review this back in the day. I was hoping that they would have seen this as like a release, but I finally decided to review it and such. This is a concept. There's a number of projects that kind of happened with where they just kind of shifted back into underground territory, and I waited for an article or some sort of I waited for an article or some sort of information about them, but it just didn't happen. So I'm going to start reviewing some of those as time goes along. We're going to get to some of these, one of which is Level Up by Stevie Stone. So the concept about this particular album is he was still on Strange Music around this time, and it did have some hits on here. There were a couple of music videos and things like that. But the thing about this particular album, well, it's a pretty excellent album, I'd say. This is definitely pretty sheer in quality. Like Stevie Stone definitely got some new tricks on this particular album. He got a new batch of hooks and things like that. It's definitely a glossier album and just has some fancy productions on here that just work pretty well. It's just kind of like an in-between type stuff of something that YG Level Up is like an amalgamation of the stuff that DJ Mustard and YG were doing in 2014 and 2015. Some of that ratchet type music as far as that kind of happens. Just a 2017 rendition of that sort of stuff mixed with a little bit of Drake hooks and just some of that kind of R&B pop type music, and then of course on top of that with just some Tech N9ne and kind of Chris Calico fare. So that's kind of the concept about it. It's a good amalgamation, kind of getting some of that because it's a little bit of ratchet music with some underground kind of almost horrorcore type hip hop. I mean, it's not full blown horrorcore, and it's really not horrorcore. It's not really horrorcore, but it does have that underground kind of shrill type feel. So it's kind of the concept. But this is definitely like Stevie Stone leveling up and breaking through to a different mold. Because I would definitely say, besides like Malta Bend, maybe Two Birds, One Stone from 2013. I'd say this might be one of his more commercial albums. He's just not quite as much of just like a stool pigeon this time around. It's not to say he was a stool pigeon before, but just in terms of like pedestrian type feels, I'd have to say this album really breaks out and really tries to aim for gloss and things like that. It's just bigger budget, just does some things right. It's pretty dope that Tech N9ne and those types of stuff were having some commercial type fares because Tech N9ne was starting to cross over into commercial territory in 2016, 2017. It's kind of the concept that some of his wingmen like Stevie Stone and Chris Calico kind of worked to. So it's kind of the thing about it. But there were two singles off this particular album, at least two songs that got music videos off of them. One was Options, the other one was Another Level. So we'll talk about Options first. So Options is basically like a tilted kind of rollout too, and I'd have to say, and by rollout I mean cruise out and just vehicle type track, just like vehicle type traverse as far as that kind of happens. Just a good thumping kind of bass type tune. I would have to say just a thumping bass, kind of heavy hitting. The song is just a thumping bass, kind of heavy hitting house party and evening outing fare. I'd have to say it's just an overall pretty sick song. So I definitely like the concept of this particular one. Just hits like a ton of bricks, just an easy kind of heavy hitter. I just would have to say this is a real nice one. This one's just a real nice bass heavy and cruise type tune that just works pretty well. Stevie Stone's pretty good at like these hooks. He definitely has been able to do like heavy hitting and just drawling kind of hooks as far as that kind of happens. He's done that on like his 2012 and 2013 albums from what I remember. It's been a while since I've full blown listened to those albums, but I do remember some of the songs like 808 Bendin', some of those type ones. I kind of feel like Options is like the 2017 sequel. I kind of feel like Options is like the 2017 sequel to 808 Bendin'. Definitely in that same sort of pitch as far as I kind of have just the vehicle kind of stretcher as far as that kind of goes. And then another level is the second single. This is definitely kind of a jammin' DJ Mustard type club bop, I'd have to say. Real nice bounce. This has some nice bounce. The song has some real nice bounce, and it works for residential jive, I'd have to say, and it's just an overall night of fun. So I definitely like the concept of this particular one. This hits pretty heavily. This is definitely some ratchet type music as far as it kind of happens. Just an underground type fare. If you were to have Tech N9ne meet YG, something like that, that'd be kind of the concept of what you'd get here. Just typical kind of Stevie Stone as far as it kind of happens. Just an easy kind of hit. This really works quite well. This is a pretty good night. This really works quite well just as an overall nightclub kind of hit that just is pretty effectual, and it's just kind of circa kind of more Midwest kind of this is just kind of Midwest variations of like the West Coast type fare of some DJ Mustard kind of ratchet club type beats. So that's some good concept to kind of get some of that. So that's some good stuff. But basically there's 14 songs on Level Up, and out of those 14 I wound up recommending to you 10 and a half. So that's pretty good as far as that kind of concept actually goes. So I'm going to go ahead and say the 10 and a half songs I recommend. So those would be Options, Another Level, Old School, All Yours, Invitation, I Got It, Touched by a Boss, Whipping Up, Crushin', Ride With Me, and the Almost song is Paradise. So to talk about Paradise, this is an Almost song just because this is kind of a ritzy, big city, out and about hopping, kind of glimmering malaise of a song, I'd have to say. This is just really an out and about type tune. This really works in that sort of sense. It's just a quick living and kind of showbiz type feel that this particular song kind of has. Really has like a real nice ritziness about it. This really feels like something you'd listen to on Broadway or places like that, just in the more big city. I mean, Kansas City, where I think Stevie Stone is from, is pretty big city enough. But I feel like just bigger places like Philadelphia, Boston, New York, some of those type places, just it's kind of bigger places out on the East Coast as far as it kind of happens. Just places where there'd be like runways and showbiz and things like that. This really kind of nice Paradise type tune. This really feels great for like an East Coast type feel. But I would have to say the reason why it's an Almost song is because I just question how many times I would listen to it. I mean, it's a good concept to kind of get, but it's just kind of one. The reason why Paradise is an Almost song is because I question how many times I would listen to it in like a standard shuffle or something like that. Just the oftenness of how many times I would get to it. I mean, there's a lot of songs on here that do have some vivacity as far as that kind of happens, but this is just kind of one that's not necessarily stock or just kind of basic, but it's pretty close to that. It's probably about 6.5, 7 out of 10 as far as what I would say the oftenness is to how I'd listen to it and just the overall addictiveness that it kind of has. So that's kind of the concept, but there are definitely some gems on here. One in particular that's a pretty nice one is All Yours. This one has Tech N9ne on here, which is a good feature. Tech N9ne's only on this album once, which is surprising because it's on his label, but it's too bad about that. Chris Calico's on here a couple of times, but Tech N9ne only really drops one verse. So All Yours is basically like a dreary kind of down-tempo ratchet beat. I'd have to say it's a solid ladies club song, definitely. It's just a dope kind of sleazy bop, I'd have to say, with like, this is just a dope sleazy bop, I'd have to say, and the sluggish vibe definitely hits. So this is kind of one that's kind of like another level, just a more syrupy kind of one, just a little bit more down-tempo, a little bit more kind of sluggish, this overall feeling as far as it kind of happens. It just works for them. I mean, it's interesting. This is a different pitch for Tech N9ne, considering the normal kind of Tech N9ne and Stevie Stone team-ups. They're usually more exhilarating. This is just kind of a druggy, kind of sleepy type one that just works pretty well. Just like the concept of how this one kind of happens. I mean, it's good to kind of have some of these down-tempo club type songs because that's just a different pitch for the most part. It's just kind of more of one where you're feeling it, just have some drinks in your system, some stuff like that, and just kind of the dreariness and wooziness of it just works pretty damn well as far as that kind of happens. But Touched by a Boss is another one that's pretty similar to All Yours, I'd have to say. This is like a bleary, kind of tipsy outing jive of a song, I'd have to say. This is like this song has a steady composition where it doesn't feel like you're fucked up. I mean, you can be fucked up on the song, but just Stevie Stone's lyrics, this has a steady composition in the lyrics. Stevie Stone sounds more sober on this particular song, but it is a pretty thrilling and dusky times. This does feel like some pretty thrilling, dusky times, I'd have to say, and it just has a nice hook. There's a lot of songs on this particular album that has some pretty nice hooks on here. I'd say Crushin' has a nice one. I'd say All Yours has a nice one. Options has a pretty nice one. There's just a bunch of ones on here that kind of have some nice ones. There's some ones by Chris Calico I'm gonna like. I'm trying to think of some other ones that have some nice hooks on here. Ride With Me has an extremely nice hook. I Got It with Chris Calico has a nice hook on here. Damn near every song on this particular album has some sort of damn near every song on this particular album has some sort of R&B type hook and ratchet type hook as far as that kind of happens. So Stevie Stone definitely stepped up his hook game as far as that kind of one. There's just a lot of glossiness as far as that kind of goes. There's songs like Crushin' and Paradise and Ride With Me, All Yours, I Got It, some of these type ones. There's just a bunch of these, I'd have to say. So we'll kind of talk about that. But so another kind of dreary and drowsy type, ratchet type beat on here is I Got It. This is definitely like a drowsy kind of tilted nightclub fun of a song, I'd have to say. It's just got a glossy kind of Chris Calico hook on there, I would definitely have to suppose. It's just a regular kind of exhilarating the song just has some regular kind of exhilarating evening times, I would have to say. So it's a good concept of that. And a real nice bop on here is Crushin'. Definitely like this one. This is like a vivid kind of summer breeze of a song, I'd have to say. A real nice bop on this particular album is Crushin'. This has a vivid kind of summer breeze glimmer, I'd have to say. It's definitely some mojito music, I would definitely feel like. And it's just hot outside R&R festiveness, I definitely feel like this song particularly kind of has. And just the gloss is really high grade on this particular song. So this is definitely kind of a summer vacation type song, just a real kick back and just kind of be in paradise, sandy beaches, stuff like that. Just kick back with some mojitos and drinks and things like that. Just a real kind of tropical kind of almost song. It's something real vivid as far as I kind of have. It's just like the concept of that particular one. There's not terribly many songs like that. I do feel like there's at least There's definitely a lot of nightclub bounce on here, but this is a particular one that just really feels like some R&R highlight that just works pretty well. But another nice highlight on here would be Ride With Me. This is a song that has over 1 million hits on Spotify. This is pretty interesting just because Stevie Stone doesn't always reach that, and this is not a single, so that's kind of the concept of the. And Ride With Me is not a single, so that's a pretty good pitch that that song reached those heights, I'd have to say. So this is like a screeching kind of car creeper, I'd have to say. It's got a ubiquitous kind of stretching hook, I would definitely feel like, and it's just a syrupy kind of intoxicating R&B night out kind of gem. So this one's kind of something that Drake would do, just kind of more sing-songy. This is kind of one that Drake or Chris Calico would do, just a more sing-songy type one as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just a definite nice one, just a real kind of creepy one. Just really like the screeching kind of vibe of this particular beast. Just kind of a twinkling one, but also kind of a screeching one that just works pretty damn well as far as that kind of happens. Just a real nice one. Like a pretty feral beat on this particular album is just the typical old school kind of Stevie Stone type here would be old school. And then a vintage Stevie Stone type song on here would be old school. This is definitely back in old days as far as that kind of happens. Just a real nice kind of night hopper as far as that kind of goes. This is just kind of a woozy swag rap type malaise of a song, I'd have to say. It's just a great deep fried charm that this song particularly kind of has. And it's just a good turned up kind of boiler to start things, I would definitely suppose. So I mean, typically Stevie Stone is pretty high octane with songs like Keep My Name Out Your Mouth and some of those type ones. He definitely had some pretty pitch energy back in 2012, 2013, 2015 as far as I kind of went with songs like Get Fucked Up and some of those type ones. But this is kind of one of the few songs that's this vintage Stevie Stone as far as I kind of happens old school. I definitely would say just a pretty hitting type one. Definitely a woozy type swag rap that just works extremely well. It's just a kind of standard nightclub type fare as far as it kind of happens. But just understand that there's not a ton of these like that on here. Songs like Options and Old School are definitely some vintage kind of Stevie Stone. But for the most part, he's kind of leveled up with most of these kind of DJ Mustard and more kind of Drake-esque type tunes as far as I kind of have. It's just some good stuff to kind of have, but it's just a lot more hooky, not necessarily softer just because Stevie Stone's pretty rugged as far as I kind of has, but it's just kind of the concept that just kind of has like kind of this sort of stuff. It's just kind of like Midwest version of ratchet type music as far as I can have. So a lot of this is pretty hooky and sing-songy. So it's definitely something that casual markets can enjoy also. So it's a good concept to kind of get that. And this might actually be Stevie Stone's most commercial album, I'd have to say, as far as that kind of goes. But Invitation is another nice one. This is kind of like a glimmering kind of night venue gem, I'd have to say. It's just a nice dance bounce of this song particularly. It's just a nice dance bounce that this song particularly kind of has, and it just has some jubilant vibes, and it's just a regular hit night outing, I would have to say. It's just got some jubilant vibes, and it's just a regular hit night outing, I'd have to say. So I definitely like the feel of this particular one. There's just a lot of these kind of bouncy type ones that just really feel like some pretty glimmering type ratchet music as far as I kind of have. It's just some good stuff to kind of have as far as those pitches kind of consistently kind of go. So this is a pretty consistent album, I'd have to say. Yeah, this is a pretty highlight, I have to say, but another highlight off this particular album is Whippin' Up. This is definitely kind of a sparkly nightclub bleer of a song, I'd have to say, but it's got a Whippin' Up is definitely a sparkly nightclub bleer of a song, I'd have to say, but it's also a motivated hustle ringer, so it's a pretty good concept to kind of get that. And this is just like a late 2010s promo cut, definitely, and it feels pretty hooky. So this is definitely some late 2010s promo cut feels that this song particularly kind of has, and it's just an overall hooky song. So this is another nice one. This is pretty bleary as far as that kind of happens, just like the concept of it. This is another one that's pretty similar to like kind of like Another Level, but just a little bit more dreary as far as that kind of happens. It's kind of in between like Another Level and then All Yours. It's kind of more perked up than All Yours, but not quite as perked up as like Another Level. It's more perked up than All Yours, but not quite as perked up as Another Level. So it's kind of an in-between type song. Just kind of a high grade, kind of mid-tempo type blear of a song that just has some nice, decent bounce about it. It's definitely a pretty motivated type song. So it's interesting to get a promo cut like Whipping Up as far as that kind of happens. It's just kind of out of sorts as far as that particularly kind of happens, just because promo cuts just didn't happen quite as much in like the late 2010s, at least not from what I remember. At least not from what I remember. It's a good concept to kind of get one of those, and just has a pretty good pitch. So that's basically the album as far as that kind of happens. To talk about the 3 songs I didn't recommend on here. So that's basically the album as far as that kind of happens. So to talk about the 3 songs I didn't recommend on here, which the 3 songs I don't recommend would just be Wavelength, Push, and Jacob's Ladder. And Push and Jacob's Ladder are just kind of more differential. Like I didn't really like the religious type vibes of Jacob's Ladder. That one was just kind of an introspective type tune that just didn't really have the cosmetic push as far as what I was looking for. I just couldn't really see too many oftentimes where I'd listen to that one. And then Push was kind of like a struggle type song, or just kind of a more kind of through the drear and just kind of through the motions, just kind of almost makeshift type tune, just in a more hustle type sense and a more kind of hustlers type. Push was just kind of a more makeshift and hustlers type variation of makeshift as far as that kind of happened, but I just didn't vibe vibe with that one as much. And then Wavelength was like a more in-depth kind of, and then Wavelength was just a more in-depth kind of lady song that I just didn't really prefer as far as that kind of went. Was just kind of one, I feel like there's a lot of good lady songs on here, definitely some better ones as far as I kind of have. This is just one I didn't vibe with as much. I mean, it had a good song topic, definitely had a good song topic, definitely like the concept of talking about being on the same wavelength as far as that kind of happens, but I just didn't over like the cosmetic pitch of that one. Just the arrangements of how it kind of went was just not quite as compelling to me as far as that kind of went. It was just kind of one was just kind of didn't really connect as much. But I would have to say, basically, me recommending 11. So me basically recommending 10.5 songs out of 14 on this particular album. I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 9.25 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty damn good as far as I can have. It's just a lot of glossiness that this album definitely conveyed. Has some hit singles on here. Stevie Stone's a pretty feral dude in terms of his energy. Has some great hooks that he does with the assistance of the hook artist as far as I can have. It's just a lot of good night energy, stepping out type fare. A little bit of makeshift thrown in as far as I can have. It's definitely some Midwest kind of ratchet music, so it's a good blend of some of that stuff. It's too bad that Tech N9ne's influence wasn't on here more, but for the most part, it just overall does some things. Just some basic kind of nitpicking, kind of minor complaints as to why this album didn't get a 10. It's pretty damn close to getting this. Probably a song or just a song and a half more, and it probably would have gotten that. I would have had to said. But the social score, I'm going to go ahead and give. The social score is kind of tricky. I think I'm going to give the social score either like a 9.75 or a 10, just because it's kind of on the in-between type pitch of that, just because it does have the hits on here and it's pretty glossy. This is definitely one of Stevie Stone's most commercial moments. Is this kind of the concept of me? It's just kind of the concept as to how much people are going to know about him and be able to find him. I feel like once you do find him, he definitely has some glossiness and just a lot of widespread kind of stepping out type hits. And if you like YG, West Coast kind of ratchet type, and if you like YG, DJ Mustard type ratchet type music out in the Midwest, this is definitely a good concept to look up as far as it kind of happens. Just a Tech N9ne variation as to how some of that happens, despite the fact that Tech N9ne's not on there that much. I'm going to go ahead and give the social score basically like a 10. I mean, I would give it a 9.75 just because I don't know the degree as to how much folks would feel about it, but that's just kind of nitpicking. So it's going to get a 10 social just because of the quality of the album, the music, as far as I kind of have. It's just kind of the pitch that you do. I would just recommend just seeking it out a little bit and giving it a whirl as far as I can have. So I know Stevie Stone's a lot more low key than Tech N9ne, but still worth it in the investment if you can find him as far as I kind of have. So that's some good stuff there. In terms of the future, like Stevie Stone has had a steady string of projects that he's been putting out, so I'm going to have to get back to some more of these. Definitely like the concept of recommending some of these because it's some good stuff. I am going to have to get to a few more. He's dropped a good ton of albums, so he has quite a few more after this particular 2017 one. So he has one in 2018, one in 2020, 2022, some of that type of stuff. So we'll get to some more of these as far as that kind of goes. But this is definitely an easy kind of highlight and a good highlight to recommend overall.